Welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast which focuses on everything and nothing all at the same time. In this week's episode, we discuss the death of drag artist Vivienne and how celebrity deaths have affected us over the years, particularly in the modern age of social media and parasocial relationships. We wonder what it will be like when other icons such as Madonna and Dolly Parton are no longer with us. Enjoy the ride.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. In this podcast, Josh and I, my name's Sean, we're two exes and we talk about so many different topics, including pop culture, music, aging, health, politics, you name it, we talk about it. How you doing, Josh?
Hey Sean, I'm doing okay. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm sipping a little cold and flu drink. So apart from that, I'm fine. You?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little bit sad today because this will be oldish news by the time this comes out. But there was news overnight of a performer who passed away. I know you don't watch Drag Race, but there's a drag performer called the Vivienne, who became famous to the broader public by winning the first season of UK Drag Race. They passed away overnight, and it was announced by their management or their PR company, and it's really sort of shocked the fans and upset a lot of people.
Because presumably they were still relatively young, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they were 32 years old.
Wow, okay.
And it is just a really shocking update. I mean, I get a lot of, because I'm on these Drag Race and drag algorithms on social media, I've been getting a lot of information served to me through Instagram and X, and yes, I'm still on X, and Facebook of different different drag performers who are reacting to this death, and people are just shocked. But I mean, the overwhelming feeling from people who knew the performer James, who's known to fans as the Vivienne, is that they were a really lovely person who was cheeky and funny and incredibly talented, and that everybody who knew them is feeling devastated. And
yeah, I've seen a bit of a few things on Instagram mostly. I saw Courtney Act posted some photos and some videos of them with the Vivienne over the years, and other friends have said. So I'm assuming it sort of came out of the blue. It wasn't. No one knows what happened, and
yeah, no, nothing's been announced. And of course, people are trying to be sympathetic to the family, but with also people, when they love somebody, and even friends and co-performers and colleagues obviously want to know, but people are also trying to be respectful of the space that something like this needs, and and I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Like privacy. I mean, you're a sort of a public figure, but there has to be an element of privacy for people to go through this process.
Who do you think? I think we've spoken about one or two of them on the podcast before, but sort of celebrity deaths in your lifetime. Who do you think? What are the most memorable ones, or what are the ones that have affected you the most? Do you think?
I think that. Well, I don't know. Like, a lot of people pass away, and I find it sad, but it doesn't sort of impact me. I suppose it's people that their art has spoken to me in some way. So even though something like Michael Jackson dying was huge, it was probably one of the biggest pieces of news, I didn't feel personally sad about it. I felt a passing of time. I felt the almost like a gravitational shift because it was just such seismic news.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when Prince died, it was the sort of most personally upsetting. I mean, I cried. I think that's maybe the only time I've cried over a famous person
Mm.
dying.
Mm.
I yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can only
And
think of
both of those, Prince and Michael Jackson, they were both completely out of the blue, weren't they? You know, they weren't. No one was expecting them to die. There wasn't any protracted illness. I mean, looking back, but Michael Jackson particularly, you can see there was, I suppose, a protracted illness, for lack of a better term, in the sense that he seemed more and more unstable, and now it turns out that he was being very, very heavily medicated to the point that he probably shouldn't have been.
oh yeah,
But
I mean they were using his doctor was using drugs on him that were used for like like anesthesia, I think, that
mm, yeah,
to go to sleep. It's
yeah.
outrageous. I think wasn't. I mean, I'm not. I don't want to speak on like spread disinformation, but wasn't the
Why not?
doctor?
Why, that's never stopped us before.
But wasn't Michael Jackson's doctor found guilty of like
I
manslaughter?
think
Or
so. Yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, with Prince, I don't know. Prince was an incredibly private person. I mean, even to a higher degree than Michael Jackson was,
Mm,
weirdly, and that's
mm.
saying something. So I don't know if fans really knew that Prince had like an opioid addiction
No,
problem,
I don't.
but
And it was also a different time. We have a much more intimate knowledge of people's lives now, thanks to social media. I
what
think
that's yeah, but I don't think even if Prince was around, I don't think he would have been
no, he wouldn't have been posting,
no.
videos of his private life on Instagram or anything like that. But
No, because it's not even that long ago that Prince died. Social media has been a thing since
mm,
before that. But you think of even someone like Madonna, who's somewhat private, but what Madonna's children look like. You see
she's not
photos of
she's not
Madonna's.
that private though, because that film In Bed with Madonna or Truth or Dare, depending on where you are in the world, that was such a, and of course it was very crafted. It was very staged, a lot of it, but
Yeah,
it gave people. We've spoken about it on the podcast before. It was like social media before social media existed. And
yeah.
it gave people an insight into her life, her thoughts, what she was like. I mean, you know, what she wanted the world to think she was like on a day to day basis. And it gave people the chance to have that sort of parasocial connection to her. Whereas Prince, I mean, apart from interviews, you would never really see Prince when he wasn't performing. And even an interview is obviously a performance in a way as well. So yeah, it was a different kind of person, a different time in some ways. But I would
And
imagine,
I
I don't know, I was going to say I don't know anything about the Vivienne, but I would imagine being a youngish um, drag race personality, they probably were very active on social media, and probably being on a reality TV show like Drag Race, people would have had a very, very strong parasocial connection to who they were as a person. So it would be a very different
well, yeah.
experience.
I mean, James, the Vivian's, I suppose, government name or birth name or non-performing name is James Lee Williams, but I'll refer to them as the Vivian just because I
Okay.
feel that maybe as a fan that's a little bit more respectful than trying to use their government name to talk about them. Like I know them as the Vivian,
Mm,
but the Vivian was out of all I've watched most Drag Race seasons. I'm not currently watching it because I've cancelled my World of Wonder subscription. But that's another story. But
okay.
I I know the Vivian as a performer, and the Vivian, out of all of the seasons that I've watched, the Vivian was one of the most likable and
Mm,
instantly engaging characters. They were from Liverpool, and they had a big personality. Do you know, like, who are some famous Liverpudlians, like Pete
the
Burns or
Beatles, Pete Burns, Sonia.
Sonia or like Lily Savage?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that kind of really larger than life, um, over the top Liverpudlian personality, are really gregarious, but also lovable and caring even when they stick in the boot in kind of
Mm-hmm.
vibe. That's what
Mm-hmm.
the Vivienne was like. And they really played on that personality, those personality traits, and to turn it into a form of entertainment and made it really endearing for audiences. And
Okay.
so they had started to become more of a mainstream personality or star in the vein of something like Lily Savage, Paul O'Grady.
Mm.
You know, they were in Panto, obviously. They were in a production of there was some sort of stage show of The Wizard of Oz. It's not Wicked, it's something else. And it was called The Wizard of Oz. They hosted a Christmas edition of Blankety Blank,
Okay.
which Lily Savage used to, or Paul O'Grady used to host.
Mm.
So they were that kind of like appeal to everybody, like little kids and grandparents, and you know they had that vibe about them. But
Mm.
they were also they didn't shy away from the queerness of who they were. And when they were on Drag Race, they did a tribute to when in Drag Race they normally have this trope where the queens have to come out and dress inspired by their hometown or a hometown hero, and they came
Mm.
out dressed in the Vivienne Westwood inspired get up of Pete Burns. You know that tartan suit
Mm.
that
Mm-hmm.
Pete Burns with the sort of more punkish hair. So
Mm-hmm.
like the 2000s Pete Burns instead of like the 80s Pete Burns, and
Mm.
came out and talked about like the inspiration that Pete Burns had given them and being from Liverpool. So they were that kind of personality, and they spoke to that real working class demographic of the Drag Race fans.
Mm.
So it's
Okay.
very sad. It's very sad that the Vivienne passed away, and you can only imagine. I mean, it's pure speculation, but when somebody who is sort of in the height of their career and is 32 years old passes away, it's usually something tragic. I mean, death is always tragic, but I use the term tragic to probably
Mm.
relate to something that is, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we should sort of speculate, but yeah, it is sad. I mean, yes, you're right, it's tragic when anyone dies, but particularly when people are young and people have so much, you know, potential and promise. I mean, everyone does, I know, but particularly when somebody has a strong sort of media presence and so many people derive joy from watching their performances, it's always so sad. I mean, she was a lot older, but when Carrie Fisher died, I was really upset just because
Hmm.
she because I she'd been sort of in my life since I was a kid, you know, like so
Yeah.
many people of my age and my generation. But I think she was just sort of having a bit of a resurgence in her career in her life, and she was just yeah she and it was so sad the way it happened as well. I think she was in a coma, wasn't she, for I don't know, a week or 10 days or something. And yeah, it was just really, really sad when
So
she died.
do you think Carrie Fisher might have was sort of on the pathway to sort of have a Jamie Lee Curtis style resurgence?
Yeah,
Or
or yeah, exactly, exactly.
yeah, I don't know. There have been other performers where I've felt touched or sad. I remember feeling very sad when Lisa Lopez, who was Left Eye in TLC, I
Mm,
remember when she died,
mm,
um, you know, quite horribly in a car accident. I
yeah,
remember feeling, and I still feel sad about that. I think talking about unfulfilled potential, I think Left
yeah,
Eye was,
yeah.
I think, one of the best pop stars of my generation, and
Mm,
the just the attitude and the spark and the creativity. I think you know, and she got a pretty harsh deal from the music industry and the press.
from the press, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I felt very sad, and I still feel sad, and I miss. Actually, it's I don't know if it feels weird to say, but I feel like I miss Left Eye. Like
Mm,
it was, you know, the music that she was a part of was a big part of my life.
mm,
Did you see, you know, they do this, I don't know, Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year or whatever they call it in New York on New Year's
mm,
Eve.
mm.
TLC performed
Oh, really?
a medley of their songs. I only saw a
Just
snippet. I
the
haven't.
just Chili and T-Boz, or
No, they exhumed the corpse of Left Eye Lopez and Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah,
did they artificial intelligence her back to life?
yeah, Weekend at Left Eyes. But no, it was just the two of them. And I don't know, I saw a snippet of it. From the snippet, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, from the snippet that I heard, I don't know if there was live singing happening, but I might have that completely wrong. I mean, to me, as a big TLC fan, I don't think T-Boz, like Dion Watkins, who is T-Boz from TLC, I'm not sure she was ever the strongest live singer. She had a
Mm,
very nice and I suppose unique and atmospheric way of singing, and like, especially on the records. But
mm,
whenever she did sing live at awards shows, it never came across as a particularly strong voice. So I'm
okay.
not sure 30 years later if she would be singing live in the middle of Times Square at midnight or whatever
So what are
time
you
it
saying?
was.
Is it sounded like shit?
Oh, it sounded recorded. Like
Oh, right. Oh,
it
okay.
sounded like playback.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay. But live EQ is so incredible now. So I mean, they could have been singing live. I mean, the things they can do with live vocals these days is pretty incredible.
yeah.
Mm,
And so I I feel sad when someone dies that I respect their art or it's brought me joy, because
mm,
we always use that term, and you've already used it in this episode about parasocial relationships, where that sort of pop culture and pop music and movies really are successful because they build relationships with people, and people feel that they know the artists who created it.
mm,
And I mean, I've felt that way this week with the news of, I mean, we're always talking about Trixie Mattel. Trixie
mm.
Mattel might actually be taking over from the Minogues as the most mentioned
I know she comes up
person.
in almost every conversation.
So Brian Furcus, who is, I mean, all these people who have got like multiple sort of personalities or personas, it's might get
Hmm.
confusing for people. But I'm talking about the person behind Trixie now, has been speaking this week about how they are no longer in a relationship with their partner that they were with for
All
7
right.
years.
Mm-hmm.
They were with their partner, David Silver, who they did the programming around the house renovation and the motel renovations with, that they're
Mm-hmm.
not together anymore. But they said that they had been quiet about it, and actually their relationship ended a while ago. And they've only just after their hiatus, and I mean, Trixie slash Brian had quite a bit of, I suppose, like private time, which is very unusual for them because they are a very public person
Mm.
this year, and that was due to like emotional recovery. And now that the fans know that the relationship ended, a lot of it had to do with that.
Right.
But I found myself I'm a big Trixie fan. I don't know if you are. Like, how do you feel about
I wouldn't say
Trixie?
fan. I wouldn't say fan. But yeah, carry on with the story.
Well, I found myself feeling an emotional reaction to the story of Trixie slash Brian practicing self care and dealing with the reality of ending a relationship. Obviously, that would strike a chord with me because famously we are like we're exes, and I've
Hmm.
had other exes, or I've had people that I've cared about that I've either changed or ended my relationship. And so as a human, that element of Brian's story resonated with me. But it's
Hmm.
more than that, because of the parasocial relationship and the investment that I've created, or
Hmm.
that's been drawn out of me by being a fan. I felt concerned about this person's well-being, like not to a
Hmm.
stalkish kind of attitude where I'm like, oh my god, I have to write to them and let them know. But I really felt, oh, I hope they're okay. Like, I genuinely hope
Yeah.
that that person's okay. I mean, have you ever felt
Yeah.
that way about somebody famous that you don't know?
Well, it's it's sad because she is now dead. But when Sinead O'Connor famously struggled with her mental health for years and years and years, perhaps decades, and there were times when she very publicly made sort of cries for help, and you thought that she was going to take her own life. You know, there
Hmm.
were many occasions where I felt very concerned for her well-being. I think I even reached out to her on social media once, just sort of, you know, because I thought that, you know, I felt so powerless in the situation. Of course, she didn't respond, but you know, there were so many times when I was concerned about her well-being, and then I don't know if this is a nice thing to say or not, but when I heard that she had died, it was almost sort of like news that you knew was coming, you know,
Yeah.
and it was so sad, of course, but also relief isn't the word I want to use, but there was a sense of release, I suppose, release, because I know, even though I didn't know her personally, you know, I was
Hmm.
a huge fan, and I read interviews, and I listened to her music so much in my life, and I knew what sort of struggles she had been going through. And I still don't actually know what happened with her in her, like how she died exactly. They haven't explicitly said, I don't think, what the main cause of death was.
Hmm.
But whatever it was, there was a sense of, well, at least she's no longer tormented, and uh, no longer, you know, struggling with the reality of being alive, you know. So
And do you feel that like some of that sorrow or most of that sorrow, it comes from a selfish place, right? I mean, those people don't know us, but we feel sad that that person's no longer there
hmm
for
hmm
us to entertain us. Like that's with Prince. I was sad instantly just because it was like, I mean, I've been a Prince fanatic, as you know, all
mm.
my life, ever since I was into music. I mean, some of the first music I got into was Prince. I remember playing Little Red Corvette on the jukebox in Redcliffe, across from Scarborough Beach Caravan Park.
hmm
And, you know, I saw Prince so many times in concert, sometimes with you. I mean, we saw Prince all around the world.
Yep.
And, but Prince could not ever, even if I'd ever got to meet Prince, Prince would never have been able to develop any sort of reciprocated relationship with me or any of his fans.
Mm.
But it, so that instant feeling of sadness, it's for what I feel that I've lost.
Yeah.
You know, it's a one-sided thing. It's not, you know, because
Yeah. Does it?
he's not suffering. Like he's
Mm.
gone. He's not there. So it's the sadness of what I feel I've lost and what the world has lost.
But do you think there's also an element of it being such a reminder, like such a stark reminder to us of our own mortality, that even these larger than life people who we feel connected to, uh, if they can die, you know, anyone can die. We can die. I mean, we all die.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I felt that obviously, like I wasn't close to my father, and I didn't speak to him for the last decade of his life or
mm,
so, something like that.
mm,
But he died just a few weeks or a week before Prince,
mm,
and then which was in turn around the same time as David Bowie and George Michael. Like
mm.
all of these people died within the space. I think it was either weeks or months of each
It was a
other.
few months, yeah.
I didn't feel sad when my dad died.
Mm,
You know, it wasn't a happy. I don't have any really happy memories of him. He was an abusive man. He was mentally incredibly unwell.
mm,
He was violent, horrible. He was aggressive and belittling. And I had made peace with the loss of him as a person in my life many, many years prior to him dying. So when he
mm,
died, it was kind of just a formality of being told. Like I
mm,
didn't even have one, not even a drop of sorrow or like loss. Like I didn't feel loss.
mm.
I felt interested more. Is that a weird thing to say? That I was interested in the process of what it was going to be like for me to have a parent die that I didn't care about.
Right, yeah,
I know
yeah.
that sounds so heartless, right? but I felt a sense of, oh, I wonder what the process will be like for me to move through this for somebody that I don't feel any sorrow for.
Mm.
And I, but then when Prince died, I felt grief. Like I felt sorrow and grief. I
Mm.
think I even felt more sadness when George Michael died. And I'm not a massive George Michael fan. Like I was a Wham fan when I was a kid, and I had
Mm.
some George Michael records. Like Listen Without Prejudice is one of my volume one is my one of my favorite, records from that time period. I used to play it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't, he didn't speak to me on a level like Prince did or um, some other performers have. I'm trying to think of any, but I don't want it to start reeling off people. But I felt sadness about George
Mm.
Michael as well. But
Mm.
I mean, have you had anyone die in your life? I mean, I think we've spoken about this before, but have you had anyone die in your life who you just had to go through the motions of, and it made you realize that you weren't as close to them as you maybe thought you were? I know that sounds really heartless, and I don't want to upset anybody.
Well, no one, I mean, obviously, no one close to me. Um, my mum's friend died during, well, two friends of hers died, but one of them I knew a bit better uh, during COVID, before the vaccines and everything. And, it makes you sound really heartless, but, I didn't really know her. I probably had spent time with her a handful of times, maybe, between 5 and 10 occasions in my life. Had I spent time with her, and that, I felt sad for my mum.
Hmm.
But I didn't personally feel sad. And then, of course, I had to help my mum clear out her flat, after she died and stuff like that. And that felt very, it felt not going through the motions because I don't think there was any expectation from anyone that I would feel sad about it. But, that's, I suppose, the most recent memory for me. Yeah, I mean, my granddad died when I don't know how old I was, 11 or 12, but I didn't really know him. Again, I'd
Yeah.
seen him on a handful of occasions in my life, so I didn't really have anything to be that sad about. Um, but
Yeah.
the other celebrity that death that I was just thinking about when we were talking about Sinead is Kirsty MacColl, and
Hmm.
that was to me one of the saddest sort of celebrity deaths that I've been through. Like I said, with Sinead, it was sad, but also mixed with that sadness, there was a sense of release or a sense of that you knew it could be coming anyway because she'd had such a public struggle with her own mental health over the
Hmm.
years, even though we don't know if that's ultimately what, caused her death. Um, but Kirsty MacColl just came so out of the blue. It
Yeah.
was such a tragic way to die as well. Like, so if any of our viewers or listeners don't know who she is or how she died, she was a British singer in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. And well, no, not early 90s, the 90s as well. And she famously sang A Fairy Tale of New York with the Pogues, which is still probably one of the most played songs around Christmas time. But she was an incredibly talented uh, musician, vocalist,
And she was
songwriter.
really well respected by other singer songwriters. So she had really
Yeah,
strong friendships with other performers, like, famously Morrissey or Billy Bragg.
yeah,
And so she did a lot of collaborations with people, but she was really regarded, highly regarded by people as a, I don't know, like a real representation or like the pinnacle of what it was to be like an English pop singer from that time period.
yeah, exactly. And she was so good at what she did that she was often sort of brought into studio situations or album writing situations by other artists to help, arrange vocals, arrange harmonies and stuff like that. She was brilliant, and she took her two young boys on holiday to Mexico and she was swimming with them in the ocean, and a speedboat, a motorboat that shouldn't have been in the swimming zone, basically killed her. So it's such a, not only sad that she died, but just such a horrible, like horrific, gruesome way to die as well. It was so awful. And then, of course, the person who was captaining or driving the boat never got prosecuted, and not that that would have brought her back, obviously, but it was just really, really tragic. And that was, I remember feeling very, very sad about that, and I
Do
still do
you
now because
well to try and talk about something maybe a bit more
I know.
positive of Kirsty? What's could you name, like, if somebody didn't know her music? Could you name like three songs that you would recommend people to go and listen to get a sense of how special she was?
It's so hard. I mean, I think They Don't Know is a great pop song. That was one of her first
Mm.
singles. It was actually made more famous in a lot of parts of the world when Tracy Ullman covered it.
Hmm.
But that's a brilliant song. I mean, He's on the Beach is another great song. She's got so many good songs. She's got like later on, I really love like England 2, Columbia Nil. Yeah, I mean, I could be here all day listing songs.
What's that famous song of hers about the guy down the chip shop?
There's a guy who works down the chip shop, swears his Elvis.
Oh
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great. That's really good. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, she covered the Billy Bragg song in New England, and
Hmm.
she famously wrote a whole new section of it. And I think her album Kite is still one of, if not my favorite album of all time. It's such a good album.
Did she do the backing vocals on the Billy Bragg song "Sexuality"?
Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah, I'm
That's one
pretty
of my
sure.
favorite songs.
Yeah,
Like, absolutely adore it. And I
yeah,
think Johnny Marr plays the guitar on that. And so to me, that's like a real, like, like an exposition of the best of British pop music. It's like
yeah,
Billy
yeah,
Bragg, it's Kirsty MacColl singing back, it's Johnny Marr doing the guitar, and
yeah.
it's about being like, anti homophobic and about
Yep, and
being
inclusive and
inclusive and stuff.
progressive. Yep,
And that time in the 80s was
yeah,
like such an
and
exciting time.
it always makes me so sad because Kirsty MacColl was famously, like a friend of the gays, and her song, well, the song she did with the Pogues, "Fairy Tale of New York," famously contains the line. Can I say it on here? I mean, we swear, so I don't see why we couldn't. But it famously contains the line, "You cheap, lousy faggot," and so it often won't get played now um, because faggot is such an offensive word to many people. But
Well, I think there is an edited version that they use for the BBC now.
yeah, yeah. But if you knew anything about Kirsty MacColl, you'd know she wasn't using it in a homophobic way. But anyway, I mean that's a whole nother, we'll do a whole episode on that. But
We went to talk about celebrity deaths just a little bit more. Years ago, when we went to Baltimore and we did like a John Waters tour, like to go
hmm,
and look at all the sites made famous by celebrated film director John Waters, we went to Glenn Milstead's grave, who is known as the performer Divine.
hmm.
And I have a photo of me next to Divine's grave, Glenn's grave. Are there any other famous people? I mean, we also went. I think we spoke about it on the pod, where we went to visit Sinead's grave in Ireland.
Yep.
Is there anybody else that you can think of that you would feel moved enough to go and visit their burial spot?
Um.
And why
Well,
why do we do that sort of stuff? Like, what's it to us?
well, it's a ritualistic form of closure, and it's
Mhm.
because we do feel that we know these people. I mean, I would go and see Carrie Fisher's grave, but I think it's not easy. It's in the forest. Is it Forest Lawn? Cemetery or whatever they call it in LA. I don't think it's. I don't know if it's open to the public. I would like
Is that the one
to.
over near Glendale?
Well, I think Forest Lawn has a couple now. I think it's
Okay.
there's the one near Glendale. but then isn't there one on like the north side of Griffith Park as well? Anyway, I
Yeah,
don't.
well, there's one actually. Last episode when we are talking about the gangs of Northeast LA, I think
Yeah,
there's one
there's
very, very close to Glassell Park.
yeah,
Yeah,
not Glassell, Glassell. Yeah.
Glassell.
Um, so I mean, there's also in Soho Square, there's a bench which is dedicated to Kirsty MacColl, because she famously talks. She references it in one of her songs. In Cancun in Mexico, where she died, there's actually a bench with. I've not been there, but I would like to go there. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily make a whole trip there just for that, but if I was ever in the Yucatan area of Mexico, I would definitely go to the bench to sort of pay homage um, to Kirsty.
When I was walking around the cemetery in Paris a few weeks ago, I obviously went to. Like the cemetery is beautiful to me. It's in a historic space. But I did go to look at the Oscar Wilde grave again, even though I've seen it a couple of times, and
Mm,
just I think as a moment of reflection and
mm.
like consideration about the appreciation I've had for Oscar Wilde's art. I went. I was walking with uh, Nada and Brad from they've both lived in Brisbane. Brad is originally from Brisbane, but I met up with them in Paris just for that morning and took them for a walk around the cemetery, and they wanted to see the grave of Jim Morrison and Edith Piaf.
Was
And
anyone at Jim Morrison's
oh
grave?
yeah, it's like
Still.
I think it's the most visited burial site in the world. I think I read.
And
I mean,
that's fascinating. Who was there? What sort of demographics are we talking
well,
about?
anyone like I mean, because you think, I mean, he died a very long time ago, right?
Yeah,
What year did he die?
he died in the 70s, didn't he?
And so somebody who was like a contemporary fan at that time might also be dead now from old age. I mean, it's so nobody is there as like the original fan club. It's
But
people
were
who,
people there like you who were just walking through the cemetery and
well,
stopped, or were
no,
people there? Because like
yeah,
remember the last time I was there, which was with you probably
hmm
15 years ago or something, there were
hmm
people sort of keeping vigil. There were people with candles. There were people who obviously were sat there for hours. Was that?
I know because it was winter, so I'm sure people
Yeah,
probably do
true.
that more in springtime.
Mm.
But I think everyone going to that grave, you have to make an effort to get to it. It's not like even the Oscar Wilde one. If you're just walking up and down like the avenues inside the cemetery, you'll walk by it. But the
Yeah,
Jim Morrissey one is in that sort of part of the cemetery, which is like very intricate, winding pathways,
yeah,
and they're not
yeah.
actually street. You have to clamber to get to it. So anyone, and there are all people sort of on the periphery of it. Everyone's looking for it at the same time. So
Hmm.
you sort of all gravitating towards the area where there are more people. So
Hmm.
it was winter. It was only like a couple of degrees. So there weren't a lot of people, but there were about 10 people who were making their way sort of in the vicinity of it to look at it at any
Hmm.
given time.
Hmm.
And you think for like somebody who died so many years ago, like were the doors that important to music? Like what is it like a mysterious romantic thing? Is it
Yeah.
because the tragedy of him dying so young?
I don't know. It's curious, isn't it? It's curious that he is still holds his death still holds such significance for people. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think in answer to your question. I'm trying to think of other people, but I mean, I suppose, to be morbid, because I mean, why not? This episode's been so morbid already. Um, I suppose unless we die before them, this is going to become more and more common, isn't it? That people who we've grown up with, people whose artistic output has been a significant part of our lives and our formative periods,
hmm
are going to continue dying, and so it's going to become more and more. Going to become a recurring theme in our lives. I think about, even though I'm not a big fan of Madonna anymore, when Madonna dies, it will still be very, very significant. When
hmm
Cyndi Lauper dies, it will be very, very
Yeah.
significant. I mean, yeah, I could go on list. Not to
I
people,
think
but
two of the most seismic deaths that are yet to come that will sort of shock our generation. And well, one is Madonna, like you said. I think that will be very profound. And I think a lot of people will take that moment to reflect on the impact that Madonna had.
and I think people will also have to go back, and I don't necessarily mean on an individual level, but on a societal level, I think we'll have to go back and sort of re-examine society's responses to her over the years, and maybe reflect a bit on how how sexist and misogynistic a lot of those
Hmm.
responses were, and
Yeah.
how unfairly treated she was just because of the fact that she was a woman.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think she's done all right for herself. Like, I don't think she's,
yeah,
I don't think she's like some people, like, I think Sinead, I think that the treatment that Sinead got, even at the hands of someone like Madonna, Madonna spoke
yeah,
out with
yeah.
unkind comments about Sinead. I think Sinead really suffered. I think Madonna probably has been hurt by some of the things and affected by some of the things, but whether it's the sort of personality type she is or she had more capacity to cope, I don't know what, but it almost fueled her in a way.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, she just dove in deeper, didn't she? And
yeah,
but who
but
was the second person you were going to say? You're saying there were two
I
people,
was going
Madonna.
to Dolly Parton. I think
Yeah,
that Dolly will is so universally loved and is so multi generational
yeah.
that it will be
I
a
get,
global mourning.
yeah. I feel really sad even just thinking about Dolly dying, because Dolly is just such a force, a beam of just light, she is such a lovely, wonderful person. And yeah, I can't imagine her not being around. So,
Yeah.
um, this is very morbid episode.
To change the topic slightly, then I've been to the cinema a couple of times recently,
Okay.
and to tie into my ongoing vampire fascination, I went to
Oh
see
yeah.
the new Nosferatu movie by
Uh-huh.
Robert Eggers. Have you seen
Mm.
it?
I've not. And lots of people I know have and said it was wonderful.
Really? Who said it was wonderful?
Kay, who else did I see posting about it? But anyway, yeah. Why, you didn't like
Can
it?
I give my opinion?
Sure.
There's a famous quote from John Waters, once again, to tie into celebrated cult filmmaker John Waters. And he
Hmm.
said, if when you come out of a movie, if the first thing you say is it was beautifully shot, it probably wasn't a good movie.
Ah, okay, okay,
And it was visually stunning, like absolutely stunning to look at.
okay.
Beautiful, atmospheric, the
Well, that's what I
tone, the
said. That's what I
lighting.
said about Wicked. I said it's beautifully
Hmm.
shot, but not a great
Hmm.
movie. Yeah.
It was a bad movie. Like
Mm.
I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
On what basis?
I think the script was, and it's weird, right? Because it's like a story that's as old as any of us, or older than all of us.
Mm.
Nosferatu slash Dracula. So we know what's going to happen, but the script was dull as dishwater. I didn't think the
Okay.
acting was very good, and it had some, I suppose, great actors in it: Willem Dafoe,
Mm.
Nicholas Hoult, uh, Lily Rose Depp, who I don't think I've ever seen before, so I don't know if she's a good actor or not. But it was
But what,
so,
based on her performance in Nosferatu, you
yeah,
wouldn't
based
say
on
she was a good actor?
no, no,
Okay.
and it was just dreary and
Oh no.
not great. And I went into it thinking this is going to be my film of the year. This is going to be like one of my staples that I come
Yeah,
back to.
yeah. I thought you were going to say you
And
loved it.
Hill as well is a huge fan of Robert Eggers, like the Lighthouse, The Witch. I haven't been a big fan of those. Like the Lighthouse, I was like, take it or leave it,
Yeah, I
right?
couldn't. I actually didn't finish The Lighthouse.
Right. So, but Hill's like, oh, he's one of my favorite directors. We both came out of that and we sort of walked in silence for a few minutes. And then we were both sort of looked at each other and were like, yeah, that wasn't great. And going online, like, and like, I didn't really look at anyone's reactions or reviews apart from headlines going into it. So I saw that critics were raving about it. But
Yeah.
then jumping online and seeing people, like, just sort of regular moviegoers saying, this is one of the most boring things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, really? Oh,
And,
I was going to go and see it, but now I'm not
well,
sure.
maybe you should go and see it, and then you can come back on
Hmm.
here in a future episode and tell me what you think.
Tell you what
But
you missed. Tell you where you're
yeah,
going wrong. But just,
yeah.
it's interesting though, talking about John Waters, because, I don't know how long ago this was, a few months ago, I was saying on this podcast that I thought the second Joker film was quite boring and awful.
Yeah, which
But
I enjoyed it.
and you enjoyed it, but John Waters named it as one of his top 10 films of
Yeah.
2024.
And
And I was just like, what?
I honestly think people will look back on that film differently. I don't
Yeah, I
think
don't
it'll
know.
ever be hailed a masterpiece by people, but I think that it was just this perfect storm of sort of ridicule that snowballed. That's what happens online with a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
Like, look what happened with, Katy Perry's last album was pretty boring, but it's as generic and run of the mill as a lot of pop albums. But this sort of avalanche of hate for it, and it's like one of the worst selling albums from a main pop artist ever in history. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I think this can sometimes happen, especially with how quick social media works to spread sentiment.
Hmm.
And I think that happened with Joker too. There are a lot of people who go, yeah, actually, that was an enjoyable film. It's not the best film. It's not the top 10 films of all time, but it was an enjoyable film. I liked it more than the first one. Like, I thought
Yeah,
it
I would
was,
say it's better than the first one.
yeah.
But I still wouldn't watch it again. But then maybe it's just that's outside of my normal
No,
genre. I don't
but
really like
that's
those
another thing.
superhero,
I probably wouldn't watch
Marvel,
it again.
whatever.
I wouldn't watch it again either. But
Mm.
um, if I had to watch it again, I wouldn't be upset. If I had to watch Nosferatu again, I'd be like, oh my god, like, if I had to watch it for some reason. But
Right.
I found myself like trying to get swept up in the atmosphere of it. Like, it was like this beautiful, atmospheric, spooky shots. And then by about halfway through the film, I was just like, I'm really uncomfortable in this seat. I'm looking around at people, like I was looking at people in the cinema. Like,
Well,
I couldn't get it to hold me at all.
well, I felt that with the Lighthouse as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I tried so many times to get back into it because a lot of people had said it was, they loved it and they thought it was an incredible film. And I tried, and I just,
Hmm.
after I got through about an hour of it, I just thought I really have no investment in this, none. I have no desire to see where this is going.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
didn't like The Lighthouse, and I think Hill sometimes feels that I'm just saying I don't like something he likes just to antagonize him.
okay,
Because I came out of The Lighthouse going, it was okay. Like, I knew not to say it was boring because I didn't want
mm,
to upset him or him to
mm.
take it personally. But, similar with what's that movie? Is it Superior, Suspiria, or I forget what it was called. But I came out of it thinking this bored me to tears. Like, I couldn't all through the movie. I wanted it to end.
Right,
And he was like, looked at me and goes, "What did you think?" And I said, "Oh, what did you think first?" He goes, "Oh, it's a masterpiece." And I was like,
mm.
"Oh my god! Like, am I in a was I in a different room, a different cinema? Like, this is not." But it's that weird how art can speak to people
I
so
know. I was just
differently.
going to say, like, there are some, one of, I think probably yours as well, but one of our favorite films is Hedwig and the Angry Inch,
Yeah,
or Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And I know some people who have seen it or stopped watching it because they switch it off because it didn't hold their attention. And I'm like, it's honestly one of the most incredible stories, pieces of art that has happened in our lifetimes, I think.
yeah.
And yet
Well,
people,
to give you a sense or a feeling of Nosferatu and how it affected me, I came out of there thinking that made Bram Stoker's Dracula with Winona and Keanu
hmm,
seem like the most accomplished piece of filmmaking of the last 100 years. Like,
wow,
To me, I instantly wanted to go and watch. I instantly wanted to go and watch Bram Stoker's Dracula to get the taste out of my mouth.
Really?
Of
Oh, wow.
Nosferatu,
That's
the rancid, and because I'm currently listening to the audiobook of Salem's Lot at the moment as well, so I'm in this vibe of like, okay, give it to me, give me like the best you've got, like, because you know that Stephen King book is, in my mind, one of the best vampire books ever written.
Do you think maybe you've just reached saturation point with Dracula vampire stuff? Maybe if you hadn't have been reading so much about it, have been listening to an audiobook about vampires, do you think Nosferatu might have
No, because I know
hit
that
differently?
I could sit down and watch Bram Stoker's Dracula and
Right.
be entertained
Yeah,
by
but
it.
that's because it's got. I mean, anything with Winona in it is
Yeah, but
watchable.
also, you know, like this, it's cheesy and it's dramatic, but there's a real sense of like, do you remember the film very much?
Yeah, I watched it. I don't know, about a year ago. I mean, I watched it
Okay,
obviously when it came out, but I rewatched it about a year
it's a
ago.
little bit melodramatic, but
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they really build it to that sense of urgency. You know, when they're racing against the sun, going
yeah,
down, it's very
yeah,
well done. But there's
yeah.
also, even though like Keanu's not a good actor in
Hmm.
it most of them build a sense of compassion or connection with the audience.
Yeah.
Like Winona's like her over the top can't breathe thing that she does in every role, and it Gary Oldman, even like in weird way you kind of root for him, and then
Hmm.
you're against him, and then you feel sorry for him because it's about heartbreak, and
Yeah.
there is like a drama or a pathos or whatever you call it to it that grabs you and
Hmm.
entertains you for the entire time of the film. And
Yeah.
it leads you on a journey. There's character development. With Nosferatu, to me, there was zero of that. I had no interest or understanding of who any of the characters were, even though I
Ooh.
know all of them. Like
Right.
I've seen Nosferatu. Like the original Nosferatu with no music or dialogue was more emotionally gripping than this film.
Mm.
You know,
Okay.
and I've seen that a couple of times as well. So
Mm.
this was not done in a way where I felt like I cared like about any of the characters or their outcome, even though I knew the outcome and I
Yeah.
wasn't rooting for anybody. And I had a complete polar opposite experience. I went to the cinema the next day to see a different film because I felt I can't carry the burden of this horrible film around with me. I need to go and have another experience.
So what did you see?
I went to see the movie Queer
Oh,
with
with
Daniel
Daniel
Craig.
Craig.
Have
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
seen that?
No, I've not.
Okay, so I
Didn't he just win an award for that?
possibly because
Oh,
he was sensational in it,
really?
like
Okay.
unfucking believable. Like
Really?
this reminds me of movies that I used to go and see at sort of the height of that world cinema craze in the 90s, when I used to go and see, you know, Pedro Almodovar films. Almodovar? Is that how you say it?
Hmm.
Why am I saying it like that? I don't even have my dentures in, Sue. Oh, talking about, we can talk about dentures in a minute. But
Okay.
I, like that, like that sort of time period of like Hamon and Women on the Verge and like times. I mean, I never saw Delicatessen, but that was one of the other big films that came out around that time.
Oh yeah,
Where
there were
where
like Chocolat was one.
yeah, maybe even a little slightly before Chocolat, but like
Yeah.
it was like a lot of non-English language films were having big international box office success
Yeah.
or art house box office success. And so Queer really reminded me of that. And
Okay.
probably in a way because it was based on, obviously, spoiler alert if anyone doesn't know, but it's based on a novel by William S. Burroughs.
Hmm.
And William S. Burroughs also famously wrote The Naked Lunch. And that was from that time period of those 90s art house indie
Mm.
like hit
And
films.
I didn't like the film version of Naked
Well, I mean,
Lunch.
it's a very difficult piece of art to absorb. I
Yeah.
mean, like William S. Burroughs was very much like his books were written as non-linear
Yeah.
stories. Like they were just absolute chaos, right? They just
Mm.
jumped all over the place. Characters changed, the narration changed from one person to another. Somebody just disappeared. But
Yeah.
um, Queer was actually written in a more traditional linear structure as a story, and so that's how the film
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And it was superbly shot. It was superbly acted. It,
Hmm.
beautiful use of music. I like the score was done by Trent Reznor and Atticus, but there's also a lot of, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but there's a lot of unexpected use of music, contemporary music in the film as well.
Okay.
And it was really one of the best films I've seen in ages.
Oh wow. All
And
right.
it was very erotic. Like it was actually very quite sexual.
Okay.
And it's interesting. Like if you read a little bit about William S. Burroughs before you go, it'll give you an insight into the parts of his life that he took and put into this story.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was famously queer and had a lot of affairs with different men in his life. He was part of that Beat generation poets like Jack Kerouac, and he had a lot of dependency and abuse, drug abuse problems in his life, and he
Mm.
also shot one of his wives dead.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
in what he said was an accident, but the suggested drinking game accident that how she was killed, he wrote that as a device into this book, and they use it in the film. They show it, somebody doing it at the party. And so it's very interesting if you're into pop culture and especially writing and literature, and
Mm.
if you're
Mm-hmm.
into really, really sensational acting and the
Mm-hmm.
direction. I mean, I think the director is the same person who directed Call Me by Your Name,
Yeah.
but I've
Yeah.
not seen that. I
Have
never
you
saw
not?
that film.
I Yeah, it's okay. It's good. It's different. It's unusual.
Hmm.
To quote Cathay Knight, it's it's not the sort of film I would watch twice,
Yeah.
but it is good. It's a
Wasn't
good
it a bit
film.
like pedo
Oh,
vibes?
very. Yeah, very,
Yeah, I've not
very.
seen it.
And
Probably for that reason. It just creeped me out a bit, the stuff I read about it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it is. It's the same director.
Okay.
All right. Well, because Hill and I went to see the Bob Dylan biopic
Hmm.
last
And
week.
well, there's a connection because
Yeah,
the
Timothy.
actor was in Call Me by Your Name.
Mr.
Hmm.
Chalamet. He was in both, and that was unexpectedly good. I think Hill enjoyed it too.
Yeah, he told me that he was actually surprised that he enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't say I grew up with a lot of Bob Dylan music in my life. My parents did like Bob Dylan, but they didn't play his music that much, and so I was never a huge fan of his music, really. But the film was so good.
Your mum sometimes watches this podcast.
Yes.
I have a memory of your one of the memories I have of your mum is singing "Blowing in the Wind"
Oh
in
yeah,
her
she loves.
what do you call it? A falsetto, or what
Uh,
range does she sing in?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the range is. She doesn't have the range.
Yeah, I remember her singing that.
Yeah, blowing in the wind is one of
One
her
of her
favorites.
go-tos.
Yeah, yeah, one of her karaoke go-tos.
I don't know if I would see it, but I saw the trailer for it before Nosferatu,
Oh yeah,
for the Bob Dylan Timothée Chalamet um, movie, and it looked good. It looked like a
it's
good
really
movie.
enjoyable. You don't have to like Bob Dylan's music at all to enjoy the film. It's just a very well crafted, well performed, well edited um, story
Hmm.
about that particular time in history, and it's just very well done, very in all senses. So I'd recommend that. But okay, I have to decide now if I'm going to go and see Nosferatu
I
because
almost want to dare you to do it for
mm,
the sake of even coming back on the podcast and saying. I
yeah,
mean, I would think it was hysterical if you thought it was amazing.
yeah,
I would even be surprised if you thought it was good, like even just good.
okay.
I
And
would
I'm
be
famously
act.
not such a vampire fan as you, so that
Hmm.
that immediately takes away a potential enjoyment factor from it. But Mm.
I'm starting to get a bit wound up by streaming services because I'm currently watching What We Do in the Shadows. Have you watched the final
No,
season?
I'm only on the second. How many seasons are there? Four? I
Six.
think. Oh, I think I'm on the third season. I'm not sure. Third or
Okay. I
third?
it's that's a sensational show.
Mm-hmm.
But I watch it on Disney Plus or whatever the Disney streaming channel is that we've got. And
Yeah.
there are so many ads. And I kind of feel like if you pay for a streaming service,
Mm.
surely that's the premium package. Surely that's no ads. But
Well,
they
there probably is a premium package where you
yeah,
pay
but
more
that's
for
what I
no
mean. Like
ads.
you that should be the premium package. That should be it. There should only be one thing.
That's the shitification of modern life.
And it's like these Disney cruise fucking adverts in the middle of the show, like or three times throughout the show. Like, and
Yeah.
those episodes only go for about 26 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm sat there and I'm like, I might as well be watching fucking TV. Like, what's the point of this? And then I told you that my Netflix account got hacked, and
Yeah.
I had to like call them, sort of get on their online help, and they were like, "Oh yeah, your password's been changed, the email's been changed. These 8 people are attached to the account as people. It was like Jenny, Joey, Stephanie, Maria. All these people had
Joey, Rachel, Ross.
yeah, and I I cancelled my Netflix account because I was like, how can you guarantee me that this won't happen again? Because not only did they lock me out of my own account so I couldn't log in to watch Netflix, they upgraded the account to the family plan or whatever it was that costs more money per month.
Mm.
And I was like, how were they able to do this without my permission? So the money was going to start coming out of my bank account at the higher rate.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, you can't guarantee this won't happen again. I don't want this account. Like there's no way that I'm paying for this service anymore. And I'm annoyed because I use Netflix a lot. And,
Yeah.
there's things like Stranger Things or,
Mm-hmm.
different shows that I watch on there. So now I'm stuck with, and I got rid of World of Wonder as well because they put their prices up, which is the drag race
Right.
channel. And so I'm stuck with Disney Plus. So, what's that? What's that other show that?
What, the vampire one?
Oh no, yeah, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
What was that? I was trying to think of another one. I can't remember it. But anyway, yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. I'm watching that on Disney Plus, and it's like just adverts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm waiting for Spotify to do something similar. Where
Yeah. Yeah.
they start saying, "Well, you're paying for the premium, but now there's super premium or something."
Mm-hmm.
But I can't think of what other. I was about to talk about some other show I watched. I can't
Well,
remember.
speaking of Spotify, may I interrupt and just segue smoothly into my EP release, because that's now live on Spotify. So I just wanted to try and spruik that for a few minutes while I can. So in case you haven't watched any of these episodes before and you don't know, I am a musician and I have finally released my EP on Spotify. It came out yesterday, so it's available. It's called Addicted to Desire, and if you just search for Josh and the Jumpstarts, you will find it. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, whatever that is.
And
What's that
Tidal.
other Tidal, Deezer, all these other ones that you've never even heard of. So please do go and stream that. Please add it to your playlists. Please use my songs in your Instagram stories or TikTok videos, whatever happens on TikTok, I don't know. Um, it's really exciting to have it finally out in the world. It's taken a year almost from recording to getting it mixed and getting everything ready and in place. So yeah, please do go and look for that and stream it. But I was just
It,
saying to you, wasn't I, yesterday? It's weird because it's a nice feeling to have it out there in the world, obviously, and it's nice
yeah.
to get feedback about it. But then there's an immediate sense of, oh shit, what happens next? What it's felt like such a sort of like a lifetime struggle to get to this point. And now that I've done that, I'm like, oh God, hang on, what am I going to do next? what's
Well,
I should,
you've got to just keep creating, right? Like this
yeah.
is what you do. You just keep banging away and make music, do things, like do little bits of promotion if that's what you want,
Hmm.
perform. Yeah, it's the freedom to create is, it's really amazing, and it doesn't have to follow any set rules or patterns, and you can
Mm.
just do it as you want, but just keep going. Like
Yeah.
just keep doing it.
Yeah, and I'm always writing new stuff, but it's just the sort of the logistical challenge or the logistical hurdle
Yeah.
of thinking, okay, so that's one EP I've gotten out there in the world. Now I have to think about the next one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good problem to have, obviously.
Well,
Um,
well, I think that it's a nice thing to ask anybody watching this as well. If you could share Josh's music,
hmm,
that helps. You might help connect somebody to music that they would never have heard otherwise. You might help kickstart a parasocial relationship between somebody and Josh that turns bitter.
bring it on, bring it on, bring on the parasocial relationships. Um, yeah, it would really help if you just share it with your friends or
Yeah,
post about it. I would very much appreciate it.
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, look for that on
Did
Spotify
you
and
see?
everything.
Did you see Hill just poke his head in the door?
No, I've got the screen reduced. I could hear something.
Okay.
Does
Right.
Hill
We're
want to
we're
appear on the
record.
podcast?
Do you want to be on the podcast?
Hi guys, sorry, I forgot it. Nice to see you. Love you.
Hi, that's funny.
Sorry.
um,
Yeah,
we'll
he's
have
just
to
get
put
got home from work.
we'll have to put Hill's contact details in the show notes as well now.
If
Um,
anyone wants to discuss Robert Eggers in
yeah,
great
discuss the
detail,
lighthouse or Nosferatu.
yeah,
All right, so yeah, if anyone wants to find out more info, just joshinthejumpstarts.com or Josh and the Jumpstarts on social media. Um,
oh yeah,
Sean,
yeah. If you want to follow me on Instagram at FatGayVegan. I also do a lot of work with Made in Hackney. So if you want to follow Made in Hackney and find out about the charity, we've run out of time. But next week I would like to talk about dentures and what it is like to be an old person, because I'm starting to find out as my body falls apart.
yeah, but you're only, what are you now? 50?
50. I'll be 51 this year.
Okay,
And that's not
that's not that
old.
old.
No, it's not old, but it is, things start to happen to your body, right? Like, I don't mean, I'm not going to say go wrong, but things change. Like, so I take prostate medication. I'm, I have dentures. Things happen where you need to, I'm in the maintenance phase of my, my body and my self-preservation. And so it's like things happen. So maybe next time we can talk about the medical interventions that we have to take to look after ourselves as we get older.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, we're not that old, but yeah, it's
Well, I'm older than a 20-year-old. And to
well.
a 20-year-old, I probably seem like a great grandfather.
Also, it's interesting to think about it on a bigger time scale. A few generations ago, 100 years ago, 50 would be an old age. The
Yeah.
average life expectancy 100 years ago was probably only, mid 50s or something, the average.
But
So,
also, wellness is very dependent on the experiences that we have. And there are some things that I've gone through and circumstances that have led to or contributed to certain health outcomes for me that somebody else wouldn't experience. So I think
yeah,
it's interesting to talk about, and
yeah,
like, how do we get to the places we're at, and why do our bodies react the way they do? Because we
yeah,
we all have different experiences. And on that final note, maybe we should wrap up. But I'd just like to once again recognize the contribution to my life that the Vivienne, and other artists as well, but especially talking this episode about James Lee Williams, who is the Vivienne, and thank them even though they're not around, but be thankful for the joy and the entertainment that they brought to me, and that I hope the people that love them are okay and dealing with the process as best they can.
all right. Well, we'll leave it there then. We'll be back in your feeds next week. We'll try and think of something more upbeat I think after today's episode, maybe people don't need another episode about bodily deterioration. Maybe we can save that for a future one.
I don't know.
But
Dentures could be a real laugh.
all right, folks. We'll see you very soon.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.